We've been grazing cover crops since, I believe it'd be probably the fall of '98. Yeah, that'd be about right. Fall of '98, we started grazing. Back then we only did rye, about 20 acres on our corn silage ground. It's been a real good help for us. Saved us a lot of hay, saved us a lot of trouble. Recently, let's see, well, when I came back, we started switching up the cover crops a little bit more. I experimented with overseeding oats into a standing soybean crop. And that was pretty simple. I just took an old highboy tractor out with a broadcaster, and they came on really well. They worked great, and they were gone by spring. So since that worked well enough, we tried the next year in '08, I think it was. In '08, we started doing wheat. And we've been running winter wheat flown on to standing soybeans for several years now. It's worked really well. And we use it in conjunction with the rye on our silage ground so that we can swap back and forth one side of the farm to the other and let each one rest a little bit. Right now we have about 110 acres of cover crops, with 20 of the rye and the rest in wheat. A couple of our other neighbors also are running winter wheat now. We go and buy it in bulk in a semi from a guy who raises it for grain, so we're able to get a little bit cheaper than buying bag price. The cows prefer the wheat over the rye in late spring. We think the rye starts getting a little bitter when the heat picks up. Right now we haven't had any heat, so I think they like everything equally right now. But I know they like oats. They really like the oats in the fall because they come on faster and they're a lot lusher than the rye or the wheat is. In the spring, they'll take the wheat later on. The rye is the first thing growing, so they hit that hard. Rye will grow at like 34 degrees soil temperature, whereas the wheat wants it a lot warmer. We turned them out on the wheat yesterday and started the tractors today to feed our feeder calves. Cows didn't even come up. They didn't even look up. They were out laying out in the grass and they were just relaxed. So it's nice to see them like that, fat and happy. We normally run them after weaning. We put them out on the stalks and run them on that, and the rye, because the rye gets put in a week or two earlier than the wheat does, and it usually has a lot more growth on it. The wheat, we move them over onto that once it has a decent top growth. Ideally I like to cover my boots, cover the tops of my boots, and then I run the cattle out. Didn't have that this last fall, so we just turned them out when it looked like it was established. And then what I usually try to do is just keep up with the growth rate. I move them from one side to the other, and we supplement with the ground hay and the silage, and that works pretty well. And through the middle of winter, we usually just keep them on the wheat, or on the rye, sorry, because it can kind of tolerate a little bit more traffic, and it grows when it's cold. So we keep them on that all winter long and let the wheat rest and catch up in the spring. And then we bounce them back and forth again until we pull them off. Having the cover crops last winter saved us enough hay that we were actually carrying, and we're still feeding not last year's, 2 years ago's hay crop. Last year's hay we haven't even hardly tapped into yet, which is pretty good considering 4 years ago we didn't have any carryover at all of our hay crop. So in good years, the cover crops let us step away from our hay considerably. Normally able to save a lot of hay this year, not as much, but normally we're able to save a lot of hay. The cost of hay right now, I think somebody told me, is $300 a ton or better. That's a lot of expense. So saving one bale is worth it. Saving 20 bales is phenomenal. We were pushing pastures pretty hard, continuous grazing. And I wanted to get away from feeding cows in the spring. When you're calving out in a cornstalk field and you're making ruts that are a foot deep or more with a tractor, calving is a mess. So that kind of pushed me a little harder into getting deeper into cover crops, because when there's a lot of ground for them to cover, a lot of grass for them to graze on, they go and they treat it just like your pastures, and they go and they find a nice dry spot and they calve there, and then they bring the calf up later. And so when we had more ground covered, our calving was a breeze. It's great calving on grass. I hated calving in the mud. I hated it. In farming, you don't farm 1 year at a time, so you take it all as an average. So on the average, yeah, we've definitely gained more than we've lost. And our soil conditions are in better condition now than they normally would be. I know what goes on underneath the ground. If you've got a living crop in the ground over winter, your microbes are more active, your soil activity is a lot higher in the spring, and when you go in, even if you do tillage, which technically is destroying some of your activity in the soil, it's still better than if you hadn't had any cover at all. Right now it looks like we're going to have cover crops here to stay. So I think expansion as far as the cover crops go. I want to put it on ground that we're not grazing and use it for soil improvement and erosion control. And then I want to expand what we do graze, because if I can get us weaned off of the hay in the fall and weaned off of the hay in the spring earlier, then we won't require as many acres of hay in production. It's a great benefit. There's challenges. It's a tool like any other, you know. Hammer is a great tool, but you can smash your finger with it just as easy as you can pound a nail. So you got to be careful that way. But I would not do without cover crops. I want to expand what we've got.